And welcome to Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Each week, we uncover the stories behind the people who live and work here in Southwest Missouri. Those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others or put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Today, we're going to explore the world of rehabilitation. Right here in Springfield. And I thought nobody better to talk about rehabilitation than Jason Hynson, Executive Director of Victory Mission. Jason's been a guest before. Jason, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Glad to be here. I'm super excited.
Jason's about the most enthusiastic guy I know. If they ever needed a new Mr. Rogers, Jason, I think you could fill in a heartbeat.
Man, that's a big honor. I appreciate you saying
that. And you'd also have a built-in audience. How many kids are you up to?
I have seven children, and we live on 6 acres, and I like to say we free range our children that way.
Is that like free range chickens? Is that how that works?
That's right. Hey, when my wife's like, get out of the house, they got somewhere to go. Yeah, that's right.
Well, Jason, it's interesting. You and I started our careers in Springfield on or about the same time. It was for me. It was in 2016. I believe you were a year later. Oh, you were 2016 too. So we've had a chance to know each other for a while, and I've always been attracted to the work that you do because it's so different. We talk a lot about fundraising and different community groups that do good work for lots of people, but very few of them ever have an end. You've got a start, a middle, and an end. A lot of them ask for things, but things never get finished, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But with Victory Mission, and I want you to talk a little bit again about Victory Mission's mission, but Victory Mission actually, as I've seen it or I've experienced it, really has to do with bringing in folks that have had a real tough time in life. You're getting them straight, getting them on the straight and narrow. I think religion obviously plays a big part of it. And you've got some great stories at the end. But before we get into the stories, why don't I let you, as the executive director, fully explain the mission, and certainly the mission as you see it now, because you've had 8 years to form this thing into what you're all about. So what is Victory Mission, and why is it so important to the area?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And really what we're realizing is we are the place, and we're reaching people who are leaving poverty, and we're giving them the tools to rebuild their life. And so what I think is fascinating about that is, and you said it, not me. I think the reality is so many times we help people, but by helping them, we sort of take the pressure off, sometimes in the pressure cooking. So if my, I use my kids a lot because I think it's a very similar thing, that we want to give people the best opportunities. And, some people, there's some big barriers, and other people, the barriers are themselves, their own head trash. I like to say that many people realize the greatest critic is the person between their 2 ears, and they're hammering them all day. And what we want to do is find those people and really be their cheerleader, really be their champion, be the person that encourages them. And everybody's got a story. Everybody's got some issues around that to where it brings them here. Obviously, if you're at the homeless shelter, or you're coming out of prison, or you're needing food at a food pantry that we're servicing, your wheels probably aren't all the way on the car, and use an analogy like that. So we just want to say, hey, what's really going on? Because if you need food, maybe you're not, and there's too many factors for any of us to say, oh, that's it, and we'll fix that, and you'll be better. It's everybody's so unique and different, and that's really what we're trying to look for.
How has Victory Mission changed in Springfield since you've taken the reins?
Yeah, honestly, it's that idea of we're going to reach the people who are ready to walk out change, that we're going to do stuff with people, not to them and not for them, but do it with them. And that was really from our board. It was our board of directors when I got here. They're saying, hey, read this book and read this thing and go to this podcast. And so the idea that charity, I think at one point when the soup kitchens first started, when we didn't have all these safety nets in our federal government and systems and welfare, when those weren't there, it was, how hard do you want to work? But we also had a lot of kids in the inner city streets in New York, Philadelphia, that had nobody was taking care of them. There wasn't these social service agencies. So all of a sudden you have this American compassion that says, we got to help all these kids, and there's people in poverty, and we're going to help them. And by helping them, like that American dream of like pull up by your bootstraps, we like almost lost that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are happy, just sort of like, hey, if the government's going to take care of me, okay. And I think Victory is a place where we're saying, hey, but you're still not satisfied. Like, life's not great. You don't have good relationships, or you might be barely making it. What about thriving? What about owning your own business? What about working for, an ESOP company? We got so many great opportunities in Springfield. What if you owned your own business? What if you owned your stake in the company and these kind of things? And I think those are people we want to find that still have some grit, or maybe they're like, hey, oh, you're saying I could do that? Really? And we're like, yeah. And they take us at our word and they try it. And that's what makes that's fun.
I think what's interesting, Jason, in business, I always said it's really tough to teach somebody passion. You either have passion or you don't. But I got to tell you, and you've been kind enough to have me in and interview some of the men, anyway, that have gone through or are part of the programs. And when you hear their stories, you know what? Their passion has been beaten down. But what's interesting is when I've had a chance to meet them, they're on their way up, and they're on their way back. So I think part of that is still true, that passion is important to have from birth, if you will. But boy, some of them can really get that passion beat down into their soul to the point where it's in a really dark place.
You're exactly right. I was just able to share, had an opportunity to share with a group recently, and the question I asked was, could the opposite be true? Right. And sometimes in our life, like, we'll hear something and, you wake up in the morning and a thought's in your head, gosh, I screwed that up. I messed it up. But could the opposite be true? Or could it not really matter? Right. It's almost like, yeah, someone told you you're no good, worthless, you're not going to amount to anything. So you've done that. But could the opposite be true? And it's almost like you've got to help rethink people's mindset a little bit. And that's where the faith aspect comes in, is we, if there's a God who loves me and has a plan for me, well, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. And I need to explore that a little bit more. And that's really, we're just giving that as opportunity. We're not saying you got to receive it. We're not pushing that down. We're just saying, look, this has helped me, and maybe it would help you. If this person, the God of the universe said, you have purpose. What if that was true? And then let's see what happens and explore that a little bit more. So that's kind of how we use that faith. But then the rest is those very tangible skills. I was talking to a local business owner on Commercial Street down here where we are. And one of our guys who graduated our program is now working in his kitchen just down the street, a few blocks away. And I just was checking in, how's he going? And he said, well, he shows up on time. He's got a good attitude. And he's teachable. He was saying he's a little bit older, and so maybe he's not learning stuff as quick, and there's some things, but he was showing up, he was there, and he was ready. And I think for the most part, every business owner is saying, that's all I really want. I'll be a little bit more gracious. Okay, so you're not getting it as quick. So there's maybe little things that you're not as quick in because you haven't been in the workforce as long, or these certain skills aren't there as far as chef or cooking are concerned, but he's there. He's ready, and he's got a good attitude. And so that's really what Victory's trying to do, is let's just take a chance. Let's get out there, step out there, and go for it. Why not? What do you got to lose? No,
that's true. That's very true. Jason, your faith is very real. Let's talk about that. Where does that come from?
It comes from a fact that I was kind of raised in church, and I made – in college, I kind of did what I wanted and when I wanted. And I made some choices that probably, broke my mom's heart, as we do sometimes. And so I think, I realized one time that either everything in the Bible had to be true or God's a liar. And that was really I had these two conclusions, that if all this is really good, then I better figure out what that is, or just leave it and somebody's lying to me. And what I realized was there is a God. He loves his sons and daughters, and Jesus came to rescue us, not to condemn us, but to rescue us from really ourselves. I think that that's been my take. I needed somebody to help me realize, look, maybe I'm not as unique and special as I think I am, but God's saying I am. And so that makes me more about you, because you're special in his eyes. And so it's kind of this weird catch-22, because people say, well, that sounds kind of cocky. And I'm like, well, it's not me that's saying it anymore. It's what he's saying about me. And that gives me some courage to just be willing and bold in that. And that's what we're trying to give to friends that are coming in looking. Yeah.
My guest today on Around the Ozark Spotlight is Jason Hynson. Jason, the executive director of Victory Mission, has been for almost a decade now. Let's take a step back and just look at the world today. Faith seems to be playing a back seat, and I'm not sure if it's playing it simply because the pandemic pulled people away from church, or if people have become a little cynical. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're cynical. I think we're scared to say things that are not correct anymore. We've got everybody's out there yelling and screaming. And I'm going to quote Brene Brown. I like how she says this. I was listening to a podcast. She was, a big thought leader with shame and identity and vulnerability. And one of the things she said is, now we're forming groups on people we hate instead of people that we are like or like interests. So if I'm just mad at everybody, then we're forming a group because we're mad at them. Well, that means I could get mad at you, so it's really kind of a lonely place. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of answers, sometimes what I see is faith. Sometimes we kind of push into like a religious practices. And anytime you go into like things I do to make myself feel better, well, then it's me doing it. Now I can have shame because I didn't do it, or I could have pride that I did do it. Mm-hmm. Well, in my mindset, it's the humility, it's that servant leadership, it's the ability to say, hey, look, I don't have all the answers, but I'm striving at this. And if you want to strive with me, let's strive together. And I think that kind of common humanity and vulnerability and authenticity, that's what people are looking for. I think we're tired of, people that are saying one thing and then they get caught doing something else. And then they're saying this other thing, and then they get, and you get to meet them and they're actually pretty arrogant and self-focused. And you're just like, man, I don't want to mess with it anymore. So maybe it's just that now we see all the things because nothing's hidden. Somebody gets a video of this politician or that leader in the community, and next thing you know, man, they're not what I thought. And it was like, well, maybe they had a bad day, or maybe they really just are a jerk and they just pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. I don't know. So,
or maybe they're human, right? Maybe they're human.
Maybe they're human. Yeah.
Is social media a good thing or a bad thing?
Wow. I don't know. I have kids. I'm thinking, no, it's not. I do not get on.
You can be honest here. You can be honest here. That's the beauty of it. You can.
Hey, man, I feel like everyone. In my personal opinion, I try to stay off of it. I think I like to say comparison is the thief of joy. So if I get on there and I'm always comparing myself to some other family, and also I feel like I like to call it fake book. What's going on Facebook today? Because change the C to a K, and it just feels, sometimes it feels like people aren't really real. And then there's other times where people are super real and you're like, did you post that for everybody? They're just, it's almost like it's too heart-wrenching. Like, man, don't talk about your abusive relationship on here. But I feel like, I heard somebody say this, we're more connected than we've ever been, and we feel more alone. Mm-hmm. So what do you do with that? Like, we have all these opportunities for connections, but back to Brene Brown, they're not authentic. They're not genuine. They're not vulnerable. And so maybe, social media has a place, and it's good if you want to connect with family and friends that you're also seeing, or maybe from a distance. But I think for the most part, it can do something to us that maybe is not good. So
hang on to that thought. We'll be back in a moment with more on Around the Ozark Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier, back right after these messages.
Hey, everybody, it's Ethan and Sarah Forhetz from your favorite podcast, Around the Ozarks in 5. I'm sure you've been wondering, how can I get even more amazing stories, events, and witty banter to start my day?
Well, look no further. Here we are. Sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll have what's going on around the Ozarks right at your fingertips each weekday morning.
Yeah, just go to aroundtheozarks.com, click on the newsletter tab to sign up.
Thanks for listening to Around the Ozarks in 5. We hope to see you in your inbox soon.
Welcome back to the second half of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. My guest today, Jason Hynson, Executive Director of Victory Mission. Jason, we've been able to hold you back from telling stories, but there's nobody I think I've ever met that tells stories better than you, because you've got some great stories and you work with these people. You work with these individuals yourself, so you can tell them really from start to middle to finish. Would you be good enough to share a couple of stories that really let our listeners and viewers know the true mission of Victory Mission and why victory is such an important word in that whole mission statement?
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate being here. And here's the deal. I'll tell you about one of our newest women who is graduating in November. So November 13th, anybody that wants to get out to Life Church, we're going to have a celebration of people that walk this process. So two of those people will be Dina and Anthony. And I'll just hit you both of their stories. So Dina, she was in a place where she got lonely, kind of like what we were talking about. She was lonely. She started utilizing alcohol more and more and more. But here's what I've realized with all of these things. It's relationships that brings people back. So she had a nephew who loved her and cared about her, and they just helped her. She got some help with a friend and ended up a friend of a friend knew about Victory, and she applies and gets here from our community and just walked out a whole different process and started to realize who she is, the identity shift. She didn't need these things that she once thought she needed. You know, that the crutch of alcohol didn't have that hold on her. We do something called Soul Detox. The first 8 weeks you're here, and you don't get a phone, no contact, nothing. And that's pretty typical of any rehab or recovery place. You know, it's like, depending on, everyone's different, but even if you go to a 30-day thing, like 7 days in, they don't let you talk to anybody, do anything. So we did that, and she just was able to come out of that, find her place. She's got a great job in the community working for New Stream Enterprises, which is part of the SRC family. And she's working over there, got her own place, apartment now. So she went from not being able to pay rent, was about to be evicted, utilizing a crutch and alcohol. And now she's flipped everything upside down, working great, faithful, has a new church family in Emmaus Church. So all these things are happening as you rebuild their life. And what I like to say is, hey, once you graduate, all we did was help you pour the foundation. The concrete foundation's poured on your house. And you've got a bunch of tools and some stuff to do. So you got to frame it up. You got to put drywall up. You got to put a roof on it. And once you start doing that, we've given you friends that'll show up and help you paint and move in and all that stuff. And there's this new social capital that's there. And Dina has that, and she's gonna do great. Now her kids are proud of her. Her family's re-engaging in relationships, and they're seeing this kind of new person that's emerged just from, you know, it's not like there was horrible things happening. It was just, I kind of lost my way, and I got to a place where I needed more help than I was willing to do myself. And I think sometimes we can all go, man, I could see myself there. And that's the honesty and vulnerability that we have to say, hey, I could be there if it wasn't for this person or that, or my partner or my kids or that community group I'm a part of. If those weren't there, you could isolate too. And then you could get in a dark space. So I think
that process took how long from start to finish, from somebody contacting you to her graduation?
It's about a 12 to 13 month process for her. And then other people are a little bit longer. One of the gals that I was just talking to, honestly, in the hallway, she's going to be at 18. She's going to be about 14, 15 months, because there was just, everything we do is about benchmarks. It's not about time. It's not like time served. It's like, hey, did you get this stuff done? Did your Did the things in your relationships, are you getting those back? What about your social capacity? Do you have your driver's license? Do you have all your warrants or bills or probation? Do you have evictions you got to get sorted out? All these things to make you successful. Do you have your vocational plan? Have you saved this much money? I like the way Dave Ramsey puts it. He says, Murphy's Law, Murphy only comes knocking when you're broke. And so, do you have,
true.
Do you have a savings account? Because your car's going to break down, right? We're not all buying new cars. And even if you have a new car, there could be a warranty issue. There's all this stuff. And well, all those things are factors that we know are going to happen in people's lives. So we're just helping prepare them really. And the majority of the problem that I see with our participants is that no one showed them that. So, their family wasn't there. Maybe their parents weren't great parents. Maybe, your parents were doing the best they could. Single parent homes, they got to work more. They're trying to do their thing. And so I think we just have to rethink kind of what poverty looks like and say, hey, look, maybe if we all had another spot or we didn't have the opportunities, how do I help that person then in front of me that maybe didn't have all the opportunities or the relationships I did?
Well, a big part of that is the old pay it forward thing. It's
Yes.
just sometimes it was funny. I was in New York last week visiting my daughter, and I was out for a walk one morning. It's a great, Midtown is a great place to walk around and just kind of get lost in if you can a little bit. And there was a guy whose job it was to clean and broom the sidewalk and pick up the garbage that's out there. And he goes up to a food cart to get a coffee and a bagel. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Let me get that. I'm going to get that for you today." No. I said, "Yeah." I said, you work hard, and I want to buy you breakfast. Let me buy you breakfast. And we wrestled with that for about 2 or 3 minutes. Finally, he relinquished. And sometimes you just want to pay it forward, and just the smile I got was good enough for me. It was only a couple of bucks. It wasn't a big deal. But, sometimes I think people maybe see through people. He's the kind of guy doing his job where I think a lot of people wouldn't even notice he's doing a job.
Sure.
And he's working his butt off, and he's probably got a family at home and he's trying to make enough money to make it work. And the last thing he needs to do is spend another $3 or $4 on a cup of coffee and a bagel.
Sure.
So, it's that's a minute part of that, but I do believe in the whole pay it forward philosophy. My guest today at Around the Ozark Spotlight, Jason Hynson, Executive Director of Victory Mission. Jason, you mentioned someone named Anthony. What's Anthony's story?
Yeah, so Anthony has a little tougher story. He grew up, he's a Native American, grew up on kind of in a tough situation, and he is coming out of that and really struggled for a long time. He was a hard worker, super hard worker, but eventually methamphetamines got him and really drug him down, and he couldn't keep a job. But when you hear his story, and anybody that wants to come out Monday, November 13th at 6:00 to Life Church here in Springfield, Missouri, we'd love to have you, host you. You can hear their video testimony. They're going to be able to share that. And that's the reality, is like Anthony was coming out of that, worked hard, had good work ethic, but was not able to keep the job once the drug became the focus. And I think that's what we don't see sometimes is we might see mental health conditions, we might see this, but it's amazing how great people are when drugs and alcohol gets removed. When those crutches or the things that really are imprisoning them, when you break them, help them break out of that, man, they're great people. They're not angry anymore. They're not going to be in tough situations, abusive relationships. All of that goes away because they weren't themselves. And I think we've got to have that compassion to say, hey, we can help people if they're willing to say, hey, I'm at such a low spot. That's it. I'm giving you the keys. You got my car. Here's the house, driver's license, wallet. Take it all and just help me, because I'm ready to go in a whole new direction. And that's really where Victory comes in is, yep, we're going to be in your business. Might look at your smartphone, see who you're texting and all this stuff. But if you're willing to walk that out, you're going to sow seeds that are going to be great, because we want you to have amazing trees in your yard. We want you to have a garden full of great things that are producing back to you, fruits
Mm-hmm.
and vegetables, all those things. So a lot of interesting analogies. I do those because I think in my mind, that's what I see when I see all these stories. You know, we got a guy in our kitchen who's our kitchen manager who graduated our program, and he's running our Victory Garden in partnership with Springfield Community Gardens. It's like, I can't believe all this stuff is happening, you know, for him, and he's doing it with us, and he's at OTC doing a chef program. I just
Is
like,
that
what,
right?
yeah, it's like once you pull off the challenges and these barriers and sort of that negative thinking, people start to thrive because we really want to be amazing people. And I think once they believe that about themselves and they stop believing what maybe their stepdad said or what that first boss said about, you know, I'd get another job, you suck, you know, and it's like, if you let that be your story, then of course you're going to end up in a struggle. But if you,
So when the government comes to you, Jason, and sits down with you and says, Jason, tell me the stories of ways to make this work.
yeah,
Does that ever happen? I mean,
no,
really?
they don't. In fact,
They
one of
don't.
the things, yeah, we don't take a lot of federal funding. Actually, none, no state. Because I don't think they want too many things. Sometimes they want us to fill out a big stack of forms that proves that somebody's homeless in order to receive services, as if you would say, well, I'm homeless and I need free stuff. I mean, it's like the government's almost trying to, you know, make sure that you really need this, which I'm glad they do, right? I think we all would like make sure that those that really need it, because some people might be working systems, and we know that's happening. Anytime you start helping people, you're going to get people that take advantage. You know, but what if there was a way where, like, you knew there was a track that you know, you could get incentivized, or if you, one of the things I know they were working locally with some single parent homes was helping moms, like if they got a raise, they weren't penalized. You know, it was like a tiered program to get off some of these state and federal aid programs. So the moms could be promoted, but they wouldn't lose it all at once. It wasn't like a cliff. It would just kind of be a gradual step down that would encourage their growth and career and not penalize them for making more money. So those are things we got to be thinking about. How do we help people and then also work ways to where they can, you know, get back? I think there was some healthcare or welfare reform they were working on that they wanted people to go back to work. So those wouldn't
logic suggest to you that to have a gathering of the minds of people like yourself who work it and live it every day? And one of the things that I love about Victory Mission, and it's not unlike when I used to work at the Boys and Girls Clubs, they held you to a standard. They hold you to a standard. You've got to put in the effort. It's not enough to say, we're going to do all these things for you. You got to do some things for yourself. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jason, if people don't follow the expectation, you can put them back out on the street.
That's right. We do. We always try to work with that, you know, because especially in our long-term programming, we're seeing something happen. And so we might have a conversation with them. Hey, it just seems like you're not ready for this anymore. And then we'll help transition them to maybe a sober living home where, hey, I just want to work. I don't want you in my business, but I'm going to work. I'm going to stay sober and I'm going to keep moving forward. Okay, that's great. Like, let's get you over there. You know, we don't want you to be unhappy. And then, you know, on the shelter side, we do set up expectations. That's the emergency shelter. Somebody walks off the street, we give them a bed. We just say, don't come in drunk, you know, don't come in high, mostly because of their own safety. We don't want you to be drunk and, you know, asphyxiate on your own vomit or anything like that. We don't have a nurse that's there. So this isn't the place to detox. This is the place to walk out kind of new change. And we want you to get back to work. We have a work ready boot camp that happens twice a month. And, you know, we'll have 4 or 5 participants in that. And if they go through that, you know, they might get extra time on the emergency shelter side there, but 70% of them going through that work ready boot camp are getting jobs.
See, that's great. We got about 30 seconds left, Jason. I know we're coming up on the time when you sell coffee.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that in about 20 seconds about the coffee?
Right. Yeah. If anybody wants to help in the community, they can go to equipcoffee.com. You can also go to victorymission.com, but coffee.com. You can get amazing locally roasted coffee and even custom labels for your businesses or gifts this Christmas season.
And that money goes directly to the mission's mission.
Absolutely. Yep.
I want to thank my guest today, Jason Hynson from Victory Mission on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Also my producers, Taylor Worley, Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us. If you happen to miss all or part of today's program, you can always find it in its entirety on the MidwestFamilySpringfield.com website, the AroundTheOzarks.com site, or even our new app for ATO, which can be found in Apple apps or Android apps. And you can hear not only today's show, but all the shows we've done the last couple of years. I'm Scott Meier. Remember, every day's a gift. Enjoy life. See you soon.